Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this episode, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland and Disneyland history with mementos, snapshots, and postcards sent from Disneyland from 1955 to the present. Today I'm starting off by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join and receive mail from my desk or from my Disneyland trips. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the e-ticket patrons Tania, Eric Daniels, Joe Gamble, Scott Booker, Monica Seitz Vega, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, Scott Cagle, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Grace Coate, Brian Crawford, Ben and Noel Bruning, Patty Wolin, Angela Reynolds, Greg Gorley, and Aaron Moran. B-ticket patrons Jeff and Paige Orton, and Joshua, and Exorable Tosh Bell. And the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Maggie and Henry Byers, Angel DeBlois, and the All Aboard podcast. You can also sign up for my new newsletter for a chance to get some postcards delivered by the USPS to your mailbox. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has the entrance to Adventureland. You can see a family of 4 walking away from the entrance. On the left, you can see a sign for the entrance to Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, sponsored by United Airlines. On the back, it reads, Adventureland, the Enchanted Tiki Room, presented by United Airlines, stands at the entrance of Adventureland, where mysterious and exotic worlds await exploration. It's postmarked April of 1969, with the San Jose Easter Seals cancel and a 6-cent Plant More Beautiful Parks postage stamp, Scott number 1366. Let's assume they visit the park on Saturday, April 5th, 1969, when park hours were from 8 a.m. to midnight. The weather was a high of 70 and a low of 51. It's addressed to Miss E.K. Hyland of Denver, Colorado. It reads, Dear Graham, a card from Disneyland to say hi. How are you? We're fine. Had a marvelous time here. This place is fantastic. Wish you and everyone could be here with us. Flight up was great, accommodations very plush. Figured we might as well live it up, as it is our last trip for a while. Ran out of space. Hi to all. Love, Mardell. Moving on through more Disney Imagineers who worked in music, this week we'll look at the career of George Bruns. George was born in Sandy, Oregon on July 3rd, 1914. He started playing piano at the age of 6, and later took up the tuba and trombone in high school. He also learned how to play 12 other instruments. He went to college at Oregon State for engineering, but left to pursue music and played with popular bands in the mid-1930s in the Pacific Northwest. He moved to Los Angeles in 1950, where he arranged and conducted music for Capitol Records and UPA Studios. He began working for the Disney Studios in the 1950s. 2 of his early accomplishments include adapting Tchaikovsky's ballet score of Sleeping Beauty for the movie and writing the theme song to Davy Crockett. The song, The Ballad of Davy Crockett, spent 6 months on the hit parade and sold more than 10 million records. In the book The Musical World of Walt Disney, Bruns is quoted to say, The irony of it was that most people thought it was an authentic folk song that we had uncovered and updated. Usually when you have a hit song, there are always lawsuits claiming prior authorship. In the case of Davy Crockett, not a single suit was filed. During the early 1950s, George asked his friend, Buddy Baker, featured on last week's episode, to help with the Davy Crockett series. George continued working for the Disney Studio through the 1970s, composing music, arranging music, and writing original songs for animated shorts, live-action movies, and animated feature films. Movies like The Absent-Minded Professor, Follow Me Boys, The Jungle Book, The Love Bug, and The Aristocats. One more story about George at the studio. He was friends with the parents of Brad Bird. Brad Bird would eventually work for Disney, Pixar, and The Simpsons, and directed The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Ratatouille. George gave Brad a tour of Disney animations in the late 1960s when Brad was 11. There he was able to meet 2 of the 9 old men, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. Great news! Enfield Post is back up on Etsy. Grabbing some vintage stamps is a great way to plus your mail. Whether you're trying to match the color of your postcard or envelope, or adding a themed stamp to the back of your mail, be sure to check out Enfield Post. You can head over to EnfieldPost.com and explore all the different vintage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and EnfieldPost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has a view of the rivers of America. You can see Tom Sawyer Island on the left, and the Mark Twain in the middle. In the far distance, you can see majestic Matterhorn Mountain. On the back it reads, Mark Twain. The stern-wheeler Mark Twain steams quietly out of Frontierland, bound for an exciting journey down the rivers of America. It's postmarked August 20th, 1972, with a San Bernardino cancel and an 8-cent U.S. flag over the White House postage stamp, Scott number 1338F. I assume they visited the park on Saturday, August 19th, 1972, when park hours were from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. The weather was a high of 79 and a low of 62. It's addressed to Sylvia Olson of St. Paul, Minnesota. It reads, Dear friend, had a wonderful trip out to Washington. Nice wedding, left on Monday to San Francisco. Was there 2 nights, 1 day. Came to LA Wednesday. We'll be leaving here for Colorado and then home to St. Paul. Weather been really nice all time. Was to Disneyland yesterday. All well back there? Car works real good so far. Call when you get in. Love, Olive. But what did George do for the parks? Like Buddy Baker, George also worked with filling out orchestrations for songs created for attractions. Most notably, he worked with Exitencio on completing orchestrations for Pirates of the Caribbean's Yo-Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, and he also worked with the Sherman Brothers on completing orchestrations for Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. George also played live music in the park. Following the death of Ed Penner, George was recruited to join and play the tuba for the Disney Dixieland Band, Firehouse 5+2, which included other Disney artists and Imagineers. You can also hear George's work in Frontierland today. The soundtrack loop for that part of the park includes an instrumental version of his song, The Ballad of Davy Crockett. He retired from Disney in 1976 and returned to Oregon to teach music part-time. George died on May 23, 1983 in Portland, Oregon. He was nominated for 4 Academy Awards for his music contributions in Sleeping Beauty, Babes in Toyland, Sword in the Stone, and the song Love from Robin Hood. He was also nominated for 3 Grammys for his contributions for Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, and Robin Hood. He was named a Disney Legend in 2001 and has a window on Main Street in Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, just next to Buddy Baker's, under the Plaza School of Music window, which reads, Music Rolls, G. Bruns. This incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is an online craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. Be sure to check out Monday's ATD, which is usually hosted by paper artist Russ Romano. I've seen many amazing art projects, learned about awesome postmarks, postage stamp history, and a lot more on different episodes. It's great to stop in for an hour to watch someone craft or design something unique. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard has an animator working at his desk, with some reference images on the top, and below, Oliver being held up by Jenny next to a piano from the movie Oliver and Company. On the back it reads, On the magic of Disney animation, guests meet and talk to Disney artists while observing firsthand the fascinating multifaceted process of creating Disney animated films. It's postmarked February 27th, 2024, with a faint spray cancel and 3 postage stamps. A 37-cent Mickey, Donald, and Goofy postage stamp, a 15-cent Oliver Wendell Holmes postage stamp, and a 1-cent American Kestrel postage stamp, Scott numbers 3865, 1288, and 2477 respectively. It reads, Hi Clocky, came across this card and thought you may enjoy it. If you don't already have it, I always really enjoy your Instagram posts and reels. It's evident how much you love Disney. Sending smiles, Nicole, at Mustard and Pickles Post. Thank you so much for the postcard, Nicole. I also enjoy your Instagram posts of all the mail that you send, and your Instagram stories, which includes pickles and postal trucks around the US and the world. I don't have this card, but I did experience the magic of Disney Animation Tour back in the early 90s, in what was then Walt Disney World's MGM Studios. Although I did not have an experience like Brad Bird, I do believe they were working on an animated feature while we were walking through. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would be helpful to share your favorite episode to a friend or on social media. There are over 200 to choose from. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment at whatever podcast platform you use. If you would like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/SentFromDisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sent From Disneyland or on Twitter at Sent From Disney. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent From Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to its host and guests of the Sent From Disneyland podcast.